Almost any society in the world has stories or folklore of the deceased coming back to interact with the living. Many of the more frightening tales tell stories of vampires or zombies. China itself has not escaped its reports of cadavers who have come back to life to prey on the living. Due to the many dialects in China, the Jiang Shi can also be pronounced Guangxi, Jiang or Jiangxi.
One story about the Kangxi that English anthropologists repeatedly reiterate is that of Lou the schoolteacher. One morning when his wife came to wake him, she found his body decapitated, although there were no traces of blood from the gruesome act. Her neighbors assumed the worst, assumed that she had murdered due to some affair, and she was quickly arrested. Weeks later, an unearthed coffin was found with the lid partly open. Upon opening the coffin, assuming that grave robbery had occurred, they found a ghoulish figure with long white hair and fur-covered skin with long nails and long teeth, holding the head of Lou, the schoolteacher. When they went to remove the head from his grasp, though, his grip was so tight that the only way to remove the head was to cut the hands off of what they assumed was a Kangxi. And from this hand being cut off, fresh blood spewed forth from the body. Upon removing the head from the vampire's grasp, they found the head desiccated. There was no blood left inside Lou's head. The interesting thing about this story, though, is that the Kangxi typically do not drink blood, and this was an invention likely influenced by Eastern European vampires after the 18th century. That isn't where the comparison between the Eastern European vampires and the Kangxi ends. There are repeated stories of people being disturbed by the undead, and upon digging up the graves of these individuals, find the body still looking as if it was alive and spewing forth fresh blood. Even the methods of destroying a Kangxi were similar to those of the Eastern Europeans. In the story of Lou, following the discovery of the Kangxi in the unearthed coffin, the body was quickly commanded to be burnt and the ashes thrown away.
The Jiang Shi came into popularity in the Western world in the 1980s from the Hong Kong movie Mr. Vampire, through the exportation of horror. China and Hong Kong by this time had been exposed to Western influences. Though not as suave as its Western movie counterpart, the Jiang Shi is often used as comic relief in these movies. Though there is plenty reason to fear the Jiang Shi.
Well, the appearance of the Jiang Shi really does depend on how much the composition has taken place in the corpse. For example, if it's been buried for a very little amount of time, you're going to have a corpse or a zombie that looks fairly normal or human-like. But if it's been there a while and sort of the composition has really set its course, it's going to look pretty horrific or ghastly. The Jiang Shi are seen as to have fuzzy skin, white hair, or even greenish hair, and this can be explained through basic decomposition or fungus growing on them, moss growing on them that would explain the greenish, white, furry-looking skin. Like if you think of old fruit going bad and you start noticing like that it starts getting furry, that can happen to the skin as well. And they're pretty pale because, like any other dead corpse, you're gonna have hypostasis, especially if they've been laying around in the back. That'll make them look really, really pale. And so they're seen as to have really long fingernails and creepy, but that doesn't really happen. It's more like with skin slippage, the first layer of skin kind of pulls back and shrinks, making the appearance of the nails look even longer. So they're not really growing, and that's a very common misconception. And they're also thought of to have long teeth or fangs, but that's also the same as the same misconception as like the skin pulling back and just making it look longer. Somehow they're thought of as being blind, but this can just be because their eyes have kind of like liquefied and they're not really there's this belief that if a corpse is buried away from home, it's not really that good. So in order to have good feng shui, the family hires a Taoist priest to exhume the body and bring it home. And because families sometimes they don't have the necessary funds to hire a carriage to carry the body home, the priest will have to put it in its back and carry it literally to the town where the family is from. So you have these priests putting on bamboo sticks and putting the bodies in the back, and so that creates the appearance of the zombie hopping, because if you think about it, the zombies are released that do rigor mortis, and they're in their back, and the priest is walking, so you have him doing this hopping motion, so which makes it, it makes it seem like they're literally hopping.
Most legend paints the Jiang Shi as a demon, who, by taking over the body of the deceased, preserves the body from decomposition and feasts upon other corpses or the living. Though like the European vampire, the Jiang Shi's existence can be explained by religious and emic reasoning.
Now, the myth of the Jiang Shi is deeply rooted within Taoist traditions in China and medieval Japan. Let's focus on China for today. Starting in the beginning of the Han Dynasty, right around the turn first millennium, we have the appearance of Taoist tradition. With the institutionalization of Taoism, Han China also saw the institutionalization of certain folk magic practices. Inasmuch, they saw not only ancestor worship, but belief in spirits, or the Po and the Kuei. From this, the soul was divided into two energies, the Yin and the Yang. The Yin being the darker feminine energy, and the Yang being the lighter masculine energy. From this, upon death, the Yin and Yang, or the Po, would exit the body. Unfortunately, in certain circumstances, the Po would not always leave and would reanimate parts, a bone, a skull, or even the whole body. Now, when the Po reanimates part of the body, this is where the Yang energy, or the masculine, has exited the body, leaving only the Yin behind, to reanimate and become a Jiang Shi. This is also paralleled in the quest for immortality that we see in Taoism. In the Tao, we are exposed to two different forms of energy, the outside immortal energy, or the Rei Tan, and the internal Po energy, or the Qi, the Nei Tan.
The Chinese believe one becomes a Jiang Shi due to improper burials, though most legends say that any part of the deceased body, if exposed to sunlight or moonlight, is likely to become a Jiang Shi. Like the Europeans, the Chinese had traditional ways of preventing and getting rid of the Jiang Shi.